Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Daniel Sullivan, your favorite author of the Silver Liner series and Better the Millstone and books forthcoming. So today I want to talk about heroes. Well, kind of. Everybody loves their heroes. Everybody loves the superhero movies. Everybody loves to watch these spanning epics. And the heroes are the thing that we all love. But what is a hero without their villain? Well, let's explore the villain that makes the hero. So today I'm going to look at two specific villains and talk about them and why one is a more effective villain than the other. First, let's talk about what a villain is. The villain opposes the protagonist. Sometimes you call them an antagonist. Sometimes the villain isn't necessarily a villain, but today we're talking specifically about villains. So, what does a villain need to be the villain? What does a villain need to be a good villain? Well, as the reader or as the viewer, the villain needs to present a credible threat to either the protagonist or the protagonist's goals. For example, in Hercules, the Disney Hercules movie, the villain was going after Hercules mainly because Hercules stood in the way of a different goal, and ultimately his means of dealing with Hercules is to simply kind of deal with him so that Hercules will stay out of a fight that he's about to have. And, hey, you sit this one out and nobody gets hurt, or your friend doesn't get hurt. So, and every villain, to be a good villain, needs to have something that presents them as a credible threat to either the protagonist or the protagonist's goals. Number two, they have to be believable as the villain. So, when all is said and done, when the villain is finally revealed or the villain finally makes their move or whatnot, the reader or the audience can't be sitting there looking at the villain and saying, "That's the villain," or "That's what they're doing." Well, that doesn't make sense. Or, "Well, that's easy to stop. I could stop that. Why doesn't the hero just do this?" And, so the villain has to be somebody who has, to be a good villain, they should have charisma. A villain with no charisma is you can do it, but it's a difficult one to sell. Typically, charisma-less villains tend to work best when they're off screen and you see what they are doing, the results of what they're doing, rather than seeing them doing it. Then you don't have to see the villain themselves, and when they're finally revealed, even if the villain doesn't have that much charisma, we've already built up what they're capable of doing. So, they make better, charisma-less villains work better when they're kind of a mystery figure that you don't really see. If a villain doesn't have charisma on screen, and if they're not overpowering in some way, again, to where they present a credible threat, then the audience tends to not gravitate to them. Another thing, the villain needs to have their goals, their motivations should be clear. Even if they're not initially clear, once you find out what they are, the villain's goals should make sense, and the actions that they take in the pursuit of those goals should make sense as actions that would achieve those goals. If the villain's actions don't make sense, then it kind of undermines the story. And the final element is the villain works best when they have very strong reasons for doing what they're doing other than just, "I'm evil." I'm doing this because I'm evil. That's typically the level of villain you get in a kid's cartoon. He wants to do this or she wants to do that. Why? Because they're evil. And the hero has to stop them. They want to do this. Well, why do they want to do it? Because they're evil. Giving your villain a motivation besides just being evil makes them a better villain. That was probably my biggest complaint about Voldemort in the Harry Potter series. Now, I didn't read the books, but in the movies at least, my biggest complaint about Voldemort was I'm watching this character and I'm really not clear on what he really wants. Apart from that he wants to take over a high school and I guess throw a temper tantrum, run the wizarding world. I don't know. I mean, he doesn't present anything really compelling other than he's evil. And literally Voldemort is just evil. Why? Because he's evil. And that's pretty much his motivation. And even when you see him introduced in a flashback, as a child, he's the evil child. Dumbledore sees he's evil and needs to try to deal with him in some way. Needs to try to steer him away from being evil. But Voldemort is born evil, and so he's going to Voldemort and be a villain. The thing that made Voldemort work was that Voldemort typically wasn't the villain of each movie. Voldemort had lackeys who presented as the villain of each movie, and each of those villains typically had some kind of motivation that was tangible. In some cases, it was literally, I'm doing the things I'm doing because I need to do them, plus if I don't, then this evil Voldemort guy is gonna kill me or whatever, or Voldemort's paying me, promise me power, whatever it is. So you don't really see Voldemort much until toward the end of the series, or toward halfway through the series. I don't remember what movie I think it was Goblet of Fire. You actually see him show up briefly, and he kills Robert Pattinson and apparently turns him into a vampire in Twilight. So, but a good villain should have a motivation besides just being evil. And they work best when their motivations make sense. And they work best when the villain can articulate their motivation and say, I want to do this, and this is why. A good example would be General Zod in Man of Steel. General Zod had a goal. And his goal, it was, what made him evil was that he was willing to sacrifice humanity in order to cryptoform Earth so that his people could survive. Ultimately, his goal was the survival of his people. What made him a villain was that he was brutal about it and was callous about it and was willing to do it no matter what the cost and didn't look at alternatives. So, but his goal made sense. When you listen to what he says, his goals make sense. Even at the beginning, when he's opposing the council and he's arguing with Jor-El, his goal makes logical sense. And even if his motivations are not entirely pure. So, another thing that makes a good villain is if the villain is somehow redeemable. When the villain is somehow redeemable, you typically have an element where the villain might not be a villain because they wanted to be a villain. Maybe they were forced to be a villain. Maybe their circumstances were such that they ended up becoming the villain because of some tragic circumstance that happened to them. And those make for more compelling characters because we can understand them. We can see how the wrong choices led them to the places that they got, where they ultimately became this villain. And then their redemption, or actually their redemption, becomes all the more meaningful. And if they atone rather than be redeemed, atoning is an active thing, and whereas being redeemed means somebody else does it for you. It's passive. So if the villain atones, Kylo Ren atones in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and in Rise of Skywalker. Again, spoilers, please. If you haven't seen the Star Wars movies, you probably should stop watching this video right now. So Kylo Ren ultimately atones for what he did, and that, you know, there are other elements of Kylo Ren that made him. I felt that he was a less effective villain than he could have been. But let's get on to talking about two villains, one who is an effective villain and one who is a less effective villain. I don't mean effective in terms of what they accomplish in their stories, but in terms of how they come off as a villain. So we're going to talk about Star Wars, as you can see by the shirt. And we're going to talk about Darth Vader and Palpatine. Darth Vader is considered the greatest villain in cinematic history by some. Palpatine's considered a good villain, but he's not considered the greatest villain in cinematic history. Outside of Star Wars fandom, Palpatine's just an evil space wizard. But Darth Vader, everyone respects the way that Darth Vader was presented as a villain. And so let's look at what made Darth Vader an effective villain and what made Palpatine a less effective villain. Vader is presented right away in a very dramatic way. You have the music. His entrance is preceded by these stormtroopers wearing armor that's supposed to make them look like skeletons. Skeletal deathbringers who come into this, they board this ship and they kill everybody. And then Vader grabs this guy, he's the captain of the ship, he's holding him up with one hand and questioning him. And Vader is this huge, imposing presence with this armor that is just, it oozes cool. There's no other way to put it. This guy is cool. So you have the visuals, and then you have the voice. James Earl Jones provided the voice for Darth Vader. And Jones's voice is, it's an amazing thing. And there's no other way I can really put it. Jones's voice really made Vader, because eventually your villain, no matter how cool they look, they have to open their mouth and talk. And if they don't come off well when they open their mouth and talk, they're not as good a villain. Vader was portrayed by Dave Prowse in terms of who was in the suit, and he was a 6'5", I think, 6'5", 6'6". He was a British weightlifter, so he had a physical presence. They put this helmet and armor on him with this big flowing black cloak, and this like samurai-looking, futuristic samurai skeletal face mask. And then there was the breathing, the Darth Vader breathing that is ever present. Originally, he was supposed to be able to fly through space in the suit, and that was why he wore the suit. Later, they decided that he was trapped in the suit. A lot of things changed along the way that made Vader a more complex villain than how he was originally envisioned, including the conflation of Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker into a single character, whereas previously in the first film, they are meant to be different characters. So let's talk about this. Darth Vader has a motivation right away. He states his motivation. I want the stolen plans for the Death Star, and I want to find the hidden rebel base. That's his motivation right away. There's a galactic civil war going on. He works for the Empire. He's the Emperor's right-hand man. And he is also the right-hand man at the present on loan for Governor or Grand Moff Tarkin. And Tarkin is played by Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing has this he's another charismatic villain. And he and Vader both share the same motivation: find the rebel base, get the plans for the Death Star so that the rebels can't figure out how to thwart it. It's a simple motivation. It's effective because every person sitting in the movie theater understands what's going on, and they know what the stakes are for the rebels. They know that if the plans are retrieved before the rebels can get them and analyze them, then it's all over. They also know that if Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin find the rebel base with this Death Star, this battle station that can blow up a planet, then it's all over. Vader's actions through the course of the film all take him in the direction of finding the Death Star plans and finding the hidden rebel base. And he doesn't get the plans back, but he finds the rebel base. And it's really, for the most part, too late for them to do a whole lot about it. They send the pilots out. They're hoping for the best, and they're hoping that maybe they can get that perfect shot. And if it wasn't for the fact that they happened to have a young space wizard in training amongst their pilots, then it would never have worked. If Luke Skywalker were just a regular hotshot pilot, he would not have been able to make the shot that he made. And even with him being a space wizard in training, if it weren't for Han Solo, who initially said, no, I'm not going to help, turning around and coming back and providing cover, Vader would have destroyed Luke. He had him in his sights. He was about to kill him until Han Solo shot Darth Vader's wingman, causing the wingman to collide with Vader's ship and sending Vader spinning off into space, and allowing Luke to then make the shot without having the pressure of Darth Vader shooting at him from behind. So Vader pretty much wins the day, apart from interference at the very, very end. So Vader makes a strong villain. Vader really doesn't make any serious mistakes along the way. Fast forward to The Empire Strikes Back, we get our first look at Emperor Palpatine, the other villain I want to discuss. But a lot of it, again, is Vader. Vader has the singular goal of root out the rebels, and then along the way, he picks up the goal of find Luke Skywalker. Off camera, we know that he's figured out that Luke Skywalker is the pilot, the rebel pilot that blew up the Death Star. So he's already looking for him for that reason. But it's really more of I'm trying to find him because I want to make him pay. Not a whole lot else. But all that changes because he discovers that Luke Skywalker is important to the Emperor and that they can turn Luke Skywalker. He also discovers that Luke Skywalker is the son of Anakin Skywalker, so there's this whole thing. And then, and again, spoilers ahead, if you have not seen Empire Strikes Back, stop watching here. Eventually he reveals to Luke that he is his father. And so Darth Vader's motivation of find the rebel base, he finds it. First thing, right in the beginning of the movie, he finds it. And he drives the rebels have to flee. He decimates their forces. He takes the rebel base on the planet Hoth. So Vader is still closing down rebel bases because it's the Galactic Civil War, and that's what Vader does. Vader then focuses on trying to find Luke Skywalker. And he hires bounty hunters to do it. So he's a smart villain. He delegates. He can't be everywhere at once. He's got to find rebel bases. So he delegates. And he gets this Boba Fett guy who, prior to the release of Empire Strikes Back, was given a lot of build-up. A lot of build-up. And ultimately, Boba Fett succeeds in tracking Han and Leia to Cloud City. They use them as the lure to bring Luke. It works. Luke shows up. breaks his training with Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, in their conversations with Luke and in the course of Luke's training, they've established certain things about the Force and how it works and how the Jedi work and how the evil of the dark side works. So when Darth Vader finally confronts Luke in Empire Strikes Back, the things he tries to do make sense in the context of the film. All the use your hate, use your anger, blah, 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 blah. So, but again, in contrast to Voldemort, Darth Vader's motivations really don't have anything to do with being evil. I mean, you could argue that because he's working to crush a rebellion, and he works for, essentially, he's a space Nazi. You could argue that that makes him evil, but that's not his motivation. His motivation isn't to do things because he's evil. His motivation is to do things because he believes in the cause for which he fights. But he, as we find out that he wants to depose the Emperor, and he wants Luke to help him, and he wants Luke to join him. He wants to be the Emperor, and he wants Luke to be his apprentice, to rule at his side. So Vader has a plan, and that plan makes logical sense. He doesn't say, let's rule the galaxy so that let's do this so we can be evil and rule the world. No, he says, we can stop the Emperor and bring an end to this destructive conflict. His stated goal is to bring peace to the galaxy. And the thing with Vader is that he truly believes that that's what he's doing. And that's part of what makes him an effective villain. Vader isn't saying, well, I'm going to join with you and I'm going to turn you evil. And we're going to shroud the galaxy in darkness. I mean, that's kind of like Skeletor logic. Vader goes way beyond that. Vader has a lot more to him. You don't find out until the prequels that, Vader's probably a little upset that he was told that his children died, and he's pretty sure that somebody knew that his wife didn't die by his hand and that his children didn't die. He's pretty sure someone knew that his son had been alive all this time, and now he kind of doesn't want to put up with this anymore. If you read the novels, you find out there are a lot of other reasons why Vader ultimately has it in for Palpatine, and only is going along with him because he has to. So Vader presents this very compelling figure. He's powerful. He's not a good guy. He's a force to be reckoned with. He presents more than a credible threat to our protagonists. Multiple protagonists. He is a threat to Han and Leia. He is a threat to Chewbacca and the droids. He is a threat to Lando. He is a threat, of course, to Luke Skywalker. And he is a threat to everything that they stand for and everything that they're trying to do. He's a threat to the attempts by Yoda and the ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi to try to rebuild the Jedi Order through Luke Skywalker. So Vader presents a credible threat on many, many levels. And for the most part, his actions and his decisions all take him closer to achieving these goals. The first two Star Wars movies are considered by most, including myself, to be the best of the 9 films. Not to say that the other films were bad, but they are considered to be the best of the 9 films and certainly the best of the original trilogy. And when you get to Return of the Jedi, the primary villain shifts from Darth Vader to Emperor Palpatine. Palpatine we only see once in a vid call during Empire Strikes Back. Now we see him in person. And his entrance it's dramatic enough. He wears the wizard's robe. He looks like an evil wizard, black robes, a hooded cloak, pallid flesh. He looks like he might be undead or something. And he has the creepy voice. You know, he does that whole Lord Vader, we will destroy the rebels. Luke, give in to your hate. Take your father's place at my side. You know, he has that whole creepy voice, and he kind of spits everything at you as he speaks. He doesn't speak smoothly like Vader does, or like the various Dracula actors have spoken. He kind of spits at you the whole time. And he's not a huge guy, but you know he has this power because Vader's doing what he says. And if Vader's doing what he says, this guy must be pretty important. He's got a fair amount of charisma. They got Ian McDiarmid to play the part. So, or Ian McDermott, I'm not sure which one's the right way to say it, but they have a Shakespearean actor playing the part. So it isn't like they got a bad actor. It isn't like he acted badly. I thought he did a fine job. It's just hard to top Vader, and unfortunately, what are the Emperor's motivations? Well, he wants to turn Luke. He wants to get Luke to kill Darth Vader and take Darth Vader's place at his side? Or get Vader to kill Luke and maintain status quo? Why? We don't know. I mean, oh, you are powerful in the Force. I have foreseen it. Well, okay. What are you going to do with him? We already know he wants to crush the rebels. He has this crazy, convoluted plan that logically it could never have worked. There are just too many pieces in place, too many things that depended on random happenstance in some cases in order for it all to work. And it was this very, very convoluted plan, and ultimately somehow all of their stormtroopers forgot how to aim. So the credible threat factor kind of isn't there. The biggest thing that the Imperial forces have going for them is numbers, but they can't hit anything, or if they can, they can't kill anyone. It's like the rebels. You know, obviously we know the rebel characters have plot protection, and you know Han and Leia aren't going to die, but you know, come on, let's be realistic. Let's see some. I want to see some tension. I want to actually believe that the rebels could fail, and I really never did. I watched Return of the Jedi when I was in high school, and I was never able to believe that the rebels weren't going to succeed. I thought the Ewoks were cute and cuddly, but once the Ewoks started picking off the stormtroopers fairly easily, yeah, a couple Ewoks do get scorched along the way, and it's supposed to make you feel sad, I guess. But you know, 15 minutes earlier they were trying to cook and eat the human characters. So, and then there was the matter of that dress they happened to have that fit Leia. I think they ate that girl who wore that dress before. So again, it was hard for me to really feel sorry for the Ewoks when I saw some of them get killed during the battle. It wasn't that I wanted them to die, but I just didn't care. And once it was obvious that the stormtroopers and the Imperial forces just were going to suck, I didn't care. Darth Vader, he still had the whole, I want to turn my son and I want him to then help join me to kill the Emperor. That was still there, but he's not looking for rebel bases anymore. Darth Vader's relegated to kind of waiting for Luke to show up and come to him. And ultimately, the Emperor and Vader have to goad Luke into actually having a fight, having a sword fight. So Luke doesn't even really want to fight with them. And then you find out, the thing that makes him really want to fight is when Vader says, "Oh, I figured out. You got a sister too. I think we're going to try and turn Leia instead." And that gets Luke to fight in earnest and fight with anger and rage and whatnot. But Vader's goals really aren't a major part of the film, for the most part. It's really the major part of the film is there's a new Death Star being constructed. We got to destroy it, and the Emperor has lured all these people here to the Death Star through this really flimsy plan that is convoluted and requires far too many random things to happen for me to believe it. You know, he starts telling you all the things he did to make all this come together. I'm like, I'm just not buying it. And then there's this whole look out the window, watch your friends are dying, don't you want to fight? Look at your friends, they're dying, don't you want to fight? We're gonna destroy everything. I'm going to destroy your friends. Don't you want to fight? Don't you want to pick this lightsaber up and strike me down? Ooh, turn evil, because if you strike me down to save your friends, somehow that makes you evil. Saving hundreds of thousands or millions of lives by killing this guy who's obviously evil and who's taken millions and millions, possibly billions of lives over the course of his career. Somehow striking him down makes you evil? The whole thing kind of fell apart, and Palpatine didn't have clear goals. He wasn't a character that you could relate to in any way, so you couldn't relate to him and say, yeah, I see why he's doing that. We don't even know his motivations. Vader's motivations at least made logical sense through the course of the three films. Even in Return of the Jedi, his actions make sense. He still wants Luke to turn, and he still wants Luke to help him take out the Emperor. That never changes. Even toward the end, it doesn't change. And ultimately, Vader atones by killing the Emperor himself. And people say that Luke redeemed his father, and to a certain extent, yeah, I guess he kind of did. But ultimately, it was actually Vader who atoned by finally throwing off the will of the Emperor and casting him down the reactor shaft. For some reason, throne rooms have reactor shafts, and for some reason, the Emperor felt the need to have that there, without some kind of screen that would keep someone from throwing you over. Lots of OSHA violations here. So Vader, through the whole thing, is still a better villain even in Return of the Jedi than Palpatine. Even when Vader, quote unquote, loses to Luke, Vader's goal isn't to win. He doesn't want to beat his son. He doesn't want to kill his son. Essentially, he gets his son to do what he wants him to do. He gets his son to channel the dark side of the Force, and then essentially he kind of lets him win. And then, then it's let's turn on the Emperor now. Of course, unfortunately, that doesn't work, because Luke puts his lightsaber down and says, no, I'm not going to do it. And then the Emperor starts skizzing him with Force lightning, and and then you all know the rest. Luke is writhing in agony on the floor. A damaged Vader gets up, comes and stands there, watches for a little while, finally decides, this bastard kept my son and daughter from me. Told me I killed my wife. Yeah. Let's just kind of put an end to that. Unfortunately, it shorts out his suit and kills him, and he ends up being mortally wounded in the process. But he turns to Anakin, and through an act of atonement. And again, that makes his character more compelling. It isn't like Luke and Leia came to him and then used a Force crystal to draw the dark side energies out of him. And then once the dark side energies were out of him, Anakin Skywalker says, oh, my son and daughter, you saved me, thank you. That's not what happened. Luke was defeated. Luke was going to be killed. He was dying. And Vader ultimately says, I'm not Vader anymore. I'm Anakin Skywalker. I don't want to be Darth Vader anymore. I've had enough. I'm tired. And he tosses the Emperor down the pit and saves his son. And he's able to die in his, as Anakin Skywalker. He gets to see his son one last time. Sorry, as Anakin Skywalker. And so Vader has an arc. That's the other thing. Palpatine doesn't really have an arc. Sorry. Pollen's getting to me out here. So, that's what made Vader an effective villain. And that's why Palpatine wasn't an effective villain. He's powerful, he's a credible threat, but his motivations aren't clear and he really doesn't have an arc. And when we finally see him again, in spoilers, when we finally see him again in The Rise of Skywalker, what are his goals? What does he want? He wants, I want you, Kylo Ren, to be evil, and I have a fleet of ships so you can be evil. Excuse me. That's his goal. To do what? I guess rule the galaxy again? I mean, yeah, he wants to possess Rey's body so that he can go on and live again. But once he has Rey's body, what does he want? We never figured that out. Palpatine was a normal guy at some point, and presumably he had political ambitions. But what does he want after that? How did he become a Sith guy? How did he get recruited? Did Darth Plagueis recruit him? Was Darth Sidious, a.k.a. Palpatine? Did Darth Plagueis recruit Darth Sidious, and what prompted him? I mean, we know what Vader's reason for turning to the dark side was. He wanted to save his wife. And he was also treated really badly by the Jedi. I'm sorry, the Jedi they screwed the pooch on that training. They just did. They set themselves up for that. But we knew what Vader's motivation was. He wanted to save his wife. He wanted to have peace and order in the galaxy so that his wife and his children could live and grow up and be safe. He wanted to have his family. And these are things that he was being denied. He was denied a family by the Jedi. They didn't want to let him love Padme. He was denied stature. He was denied a lot of things along the way. And he wanted these things. And we understand why he wanted these things. And over the course of 6 films, the original trilogy and the prequels, whatever you think of the prequels, we get his motivations, and they make sense. He has an arc. His decisions make sense, for the most part. Palpatine has no arc, apart from that part where his political machinations give him control of the Senate, but that's not really an arc. He's just being the villain. Padme had an arc. Anakin had an arc. Obi-Wan Kenobi had an arc. They had arcs. Palpatine was just there to be evil. Why does he want to take over the Senate? Because he's evil. Why does he want to rule the galaxy? Because he's evil. Why does he want to bring Anakin into the dark side? Because he's evil. And he wants to make Anakin evil. Because then he can destroy the Jedi. Why does he want to destroy the Jedi? Because he's evil. Ha 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 ha. And, yeah, I know that if you read through all of the various Star Wars comics and stuff, yeah, you maybe you get some of that whole Sith Jedi thing that goes back multiple millennia. Maybe that's a motivation. I don't know. But as a character, he lacks any real motivations to me. This is a long video. It's gone past 40 minutes, so I'm going to cut it here. I appreciate you sitting through this whole thing with me. Let me know what you think. I'm going to upload this video, and I'm going to stay online for an hour, and I'll watch the comment sections. And actually, today I think I'll stay on a little bit longer than that because it'll take you almost that long to watch this video. So don't forget, like the video, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for notifications, and share the video. Share my channel. Bring people in. Also, I'm on other media. Catch me on Instagram. I'm Daniel Sullivan Books on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Daniel Sullivan Books. I have a Facebook page there. There's also a group that you can join, and I do pop in on that group periodically, generally a couple times a week. So there we are. Anyway, thank you for staying with me. Have a great evening, and I'll see you the next time.